Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Geeks of the Round discussion of House of Cards. Tonight's discussion is on Chapter 6, and I have with us Allyson Whipple and Emily Lind.
Howdy.
To discuss the proceedings. All right. Pretty small group. Hopefully that won't hinder good discussion for the night. So, a lot happens in this installment, Chapter 6. We start with Underwood seemingly backed into a corner, just fighting tooth and nail for just one more week of negotiation. And by the end of it, he has engineered an incident that gets the public opinion back on his side and has ended the whole strike. Now, it's sort of a twist ending, in which we find out that that brick was actually thrown by, Underwood's chief of staff, Stamper, which sort of changes the way you look at the whole episode in retrospect, right?
Definitely. Yeah. It's a different episode when I rewatched it before the discussion than it was the first time I watched it.
Oh yeah.
Agreed. And what was really what was going through my head this time around was, was this plan just a little too convoluted to be believable?
I'd say so. Not that I am a criminal mastermind, but I really have trouble conceiving that even a conniving, deep in the trenches government official could really orchestrate something to that degree.
Well, how much did he actually orchestrate, and how much just sort of spiraled out from it?
Right, it does seem to be that he had a slightly lower degree of control than usual. That's for sure. We see several times in the episode he talks about how things are unpredictable. He didn't think that Spinella would go on strike. He didn't think the strike would last that long. He didn't think Meacham was going to fire his gun in the neighborhood. And when he's on the phone with Claire late in the episode, he said this one is up to fate. So he's basically counting on luck. Well, luck and a certain amount of inevitability to give him this drive-by shooting that he uses as his sort of political trump card.
Mm-hmm. But I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Well, I think the brick was actually a smaller move, at least when he originally planned it. I think he probably thought this is going to swing sympathy away from unions. And maybe even he thought as far as this is going to get me to, on TV debating him. And I'm, from what he said, assuming, that he was just going to trump the guy. And of course he doesn't, leading to a scene that I have to admit I could not watch the second time through.
Oh God, yeah.
It makes me, my embarrassment, empathy is way too high. I had to skip over it.
Yeah, I really didn't want to rewatch it.
Kevin Spacey sells that cluelessness about it too. There's this expression that he gets on his face when he goes, "You, oh, I." He has this expression on his face like he doesn't know whether to keep rolling with it or not. He makes the wrong decision.
So, my question is, what happened there? I mean, that's a side to him we just haven't seen the slightest bit of.
It's true.
There was a second, the very first time I viewed this, where I was like, oh God, does he have a brain tumor?
I could see that. It's fixating on one word and losing his ability to process thought. Education. Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's just that he was so overconfident that as soon as he lost the slightest bit of control, he just had no idea how to recover. But
Snowballed.
it's really bad.
Yeah, it really is. And what Claire says to him on the drive home is, after my first time watching through, this was the one quote that stuck with me the most, I think, was, she says, I'm not mad that you improvised. I just wish you'd done it better. Which is one of several things that gets said and done in this episode that really sheds a lot of light on their marriage. Claire's going through a lot, and it's mostly in the background because her plot doesn't get a whole lot of attention this week. But what we do have are two plots involving her. One with the former their former bodyguard Steve, and one with this homeless guy that she gives a $20 bill to. I was wondering what you guys thought about how these two storylines gave us more of what Claire's all about.
I mean, the stuff with Steve definitely, I mean, explicitly lays out a lot of their relationship. And I think it's interesting that it comes halfway through the series. But I think it does a great job of showing that it is a real relationship. And she's not being taken advantage of. She didn't get into this blind. She knew exactly what she was getting into, and that's what she wanted, which I think really strengthens her character a lot, even if it maybe makes her not a particularly sympathetic person, or not a good person.
I'll buy that. But she does see this homeless guy on the street and give him $20. What?
Yeah, and I don't.
Something about that felt so contrived to me. Like I've seen that trope done so often that it had absolutely no meaning to me at all.
I wonder if what they were getting at was that the way he returns that dollar folded up as a crane. I wonder if they were trying to strike a metaphor in which that's the same thing that she does to Steve. That he tries to give her this profession of his love, and she just... I mean, in addition to sort of giving her the origin story between her and Frank, she also just cheapens that whole moment by doing what she does.
Actually, now that you bring that up, I think it's interesting because I think that profession of love, he doesn't know her at all. That profession of love is, she's a pretty woman who stands by, this politician's side. And so I think maybe that profession of love echoes sort of her helping the homeless, really seeing him at all, which is, this is a homeless guy, I can give him some money and then my conscience will be eased.
Yeah. Joining us just now is Lynn Ith. Hi, Lynn. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Sorry I'm late.
Claire Underwood. Especially in this episode where she gives a homeless guy money and then rebukes Steve, their former bodyguard guy.
Yeah.
What was your read on that scene?
Well, it's actually kind of a weird situation there. So I watched the episode again on Monday night, and the first time I watched it, I must have stepped out of the room or something when she went to visit him in the hospital the second time, because this was the first time I'd seen that. And this kind of explains a little bit more of why people were just like, you know, I heard some comments about Claire somewhere else, and I was like, what did she do that was so bad? So there it is. Now there's nothing left. I have no sympathy at all for her. Yeah.
That scene made me like her a lot more.
I think a lot was the movie Rushmore, where Jason Schwartzman character is talking to the teacher, and she says, "What do you think is going to happen? Do you think we're going to have sex?" And he says, "Well, that's a cheap way to put it." I think she did the exact same thing. She was like, "What did you expect?" And then she just reaches under the covers and grabs him.
She's
like
living in a different world. I mean,
Yeah,
who
exactly.
would expect that?
Yeah.
You know, she's on a different planet. So yeah.
So it drew her character into pretty sharp relief for me, because what she did was basically not just say no, but actually destroyed his entire image of her.
But his image of her was just
It was wrong.
like
Yeah.
sexist and on the like, and she's pointed out there that, you know, Frank's a guy who doesn't put her on a pedestal, and that's what she wants. She wants somebody who actually sees who she is. And so I really came out, disturbing as it is and as brutal as it is, I had a lot more respect for her after it.
All right, fair enough.
I hadn't thought of it that way. I was thinking she could have done it some other way, but I get what you're saying. I just think that her choice could have been a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's memorable.
That it was. You know, we're going to see more of the conflict between her professional life and her marriage in the weeks to come, but I thought it was really refreshing, especially after last week's revelation that they have a sort of open marriage arrangement in which they sort of use sex as a bargaining chip. It was really interesting to get sort of that origin story speech this time, in which she explains why they work together. She explains the dynamic between them that makes them click as a couple.
And I mean, especially after the scene with them at the end, I like that it wasn't simply an arrangement of they're good for each other professionally. I mean, that's definitely a part of it, is they work together, and like, I mean, she especially is supporting him in his politics and that need he has for power, but it's not just that. There is genuine affection there, and there is genuine love there. I think that last scene when they're sharing the cigarette together is almost touching.
It's true, especially because he blows off Zoe to keep being with her. But he calls Zoe work. He says, "I'm done with work for today."
Yeah.
Now, when she goes through that speech about why their marriage works and why she loves Frank and why he's so special to her, it really reminded me, going back to that CNN interview, it reminded me of the expression that was on her face when Marty said, "You owe your wife an apology for bringing her into this." Especially on a second watch, knowing that other speech was coming up, the expression on Robin Wright's face at that exact moment. What was you guys read on her reaction?
Oh, I think it's different on rewatch.
Yeah.
Knowing how involved she was from the get-go,
Yeah.
it makes it a different scene.
Yeah.
she, to my eyes, it really seemed like she was scoffing. Like, you have no idea.
Like, it's interesting because it sort of, I feel like the first time I watched it through, I thought she was annoyed with Frank. And then you watch it again and you realize that's not at all what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. She didn't seem to get annoyed with Frank until he started playing the vowel game. I also loved that whole interview, or that whole debate was in front of a green screen, and so we got the direct on shots of the two of them in front of that green screen, and we also got the television shot of all the CNN TVs in the background too, which really emphasized just how fake this entire debate is. Mm-hmm. Just how fake everything about it is, and how insincere the whole thing is. Because they keep talking about education reform, but we haven't. I don't want to harp on this point too much. I'll probably bring it up every few weeks or something, but they don't really care about making education better.
No.
They don't really care. So.
No,
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say they don't. I mean, Marty, he's there for the teachers and whatever personal glory he gets out of it, and Frank is just there to gain the president's trust by doing a big thing.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
about it.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that's about it.
Speaking of the president, we get a scene with him this episode.
Yes.
Go figure. Maybe I'm oversimplifying, but my take on the scene is Walker pushes for changes that would neuter his own bill. Mm-hmm. Underwood says no, and that's it.
Yeah.
Is the show trying to make a point about how little agency the president has?
I don't even know if it's necessarily about the president not having agency. I think it's just in Frank's story, the president is not particularly important, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah.
I mean, I think part of it is showing how somebody can just steamroll over the president. But I don't think they're trying to say that the doesn't matter, like in politics. I think they're just saying to Frank, the president is almost an afterthought. It's just one more obstacle.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, he does kind of give him some lip service when he turns to the camera and says it's not the easiest thing in the world to say no to the most powerful man in the free world. But of course he does, and President Walker. That aside has a weird effect of breaking up that scene, because if that aside to the camera weren't there, I think the rhythm of that scene would have felt really off, because Walker just kind of changes the subject. He just kind of bristles a little bit and then goes, "Whoa, well, okay, let's move on."
What I like is he doesn't even say that. He just moves on.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like the president doesn't even want to acknowledge that just happened. Like, he's willing to let Frank do his thing, but he's not even going to say, "Okay, no, you're right, go do it."
That's a good point. This was one of the things. This is one of the things in the trailer that Netflix released in advance to the show. One of the really prominent clips was Kevin Spacey saying, "I'm sorry, Mr. President, but I won't do that." And you were like, "Whoa, what's he doing?"
And then it's just like a good 30 seconds.
And it turns out to be almost a little nothing scene. So I don't know. Without going too much into it, I do know Walker's going to be more of a presence in the second half of the season, especially the last few episodes. But right now, it's really striking to me just how little he has to do. just how unimportant the president is in this story.
Well, and what's weird to me is that Frank keeps talking about power and the importance of power. And if the president is ostensibly the most powerful person in the United States, and Frank can just say no to him in a way that appears fairly effortless, what's he going for?
Yeah.
What's he doing? What's his point? Why does he exist?
Well, I think that scene when Frank comes out of there, you realize it's sort of he's in an all or nothing position at that point.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
If he doesn't say no to the president here, what's he been doing?
Yeah.
So I think it's very calculated. I don't think it's a small decision what he does there. I don't think it's offhand. Like, I think that was very calculated and really, in the end, very risky.
He does all the riskiest stuff he has done so far in this one episode. And it's interesting to see because we do get to see him sweat a little. We get to see his back against the wall. He says right in the opening monologue, this is the worst position to be in. Right? And so, with very little maneuvering room, we get to see... and it seems like being backed into this position has really brought out his underhanded side. We get to see him being just the nastiest he's been so far. The monologue he delivers to Marty at the end, across that conference table, was just like, whoa, what? We've seen it being kind of nasty before, but that was just obscene.
It was, and what's also interesting there is how physical he gets.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Marty's the one who throws the punch, but Frank
pushed him up
against
the
physicality of having somebody trapped like that. I mean, that's a huge power move in a way that's very different than the sort of political maneuvering that we've seen from him so far.
It's true. And it's really a different type of manipulation from what we've seen before. We've seen him sort of shuffle cards around and get people talking about each other behind their backs, but this is one moment where he really just plays one guy like a fiddle, and he launches insults at him, homophobic rhetoric, he corners him with his arms, and he just knows he's building up to that punch, that Ben Linus moment, where just getting hit is going to score him that victory, and it does.
Yeah, he's always goading, in his little side speeches, he's always goading somebody secretly. Yeah. And now he gets to do it in person.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting. I just wanted to see how far he was going. He wasn't afraid to get hit at all. He wanted it, so.
I have to say, I like that the show acknowledges how big of a deal it is for an adult to punch another adult. It seems like physical, like, oh, you're angering me, so now I'm going to punch you. Like, happens way too much on TV in terms of not having any real consequences. Which, if you're a professional in a business setting, you can't just punch somebody, congressman or no. Like, I mean, it's worse because, like, he's a congressman, you can't do that. But I like that it's not just like, oh, okay, that's perfectly fine. You punch somebody, there's going to be no consequences.
Oh, yeah. And that's a good point. We do see there are a lot of... It's kind of a shortcut to drama, right? Get people into physical altercations. We're going to see another really good fight scene later on. But that's all I'll say about that. So let's go ahead and shift our focus now to the half of the cast that we haven't talked about yet. Zoe kind of gets a short shrift this episode, I'll admit. But I do see this recurring focus on the impermanence of her position in life. A few episodes ago, Frank said, "Do you really want a job that you can't afford to be fired from?" And in this episode, she's having this conversation with her editor, whose name I've forgotten, I'm sorry, where she says, "Do you really want to have a job for more than 2 years?" What is it about Zoe that is inviting that kind of talk? Everybody else in the show has been doing the same thing for a long time.
I don't know. I mean, it might be something to dramatically underscore the generation she represents and point a big neon sign. Like, that's not the first time I've heard something like that directed toward people of my age, and I am only a few years older than Zoe.
Oh yeah, and I've been having this conversation with various people for a while because I've been at my job for about 2 years now. And depending, for older people, that's like, oh, well, you just got started. For people who are my age or younger, it's like, wow, you've been there for a while. So I'm wondering if it's a comment on her generation, if it's a comment on the journalism world, if it's a comment on her path to accruing more power. I don't know. What do you think?
I think a lot of it is
Go ahead, Emma.
sorry. I think a lot of it is her sort of quest to. I don't even know. It's hard to think of moving up the ladder because normally when you say moving up the ladder, you're at one job and just moving up the rungs there. I think there is something to the generational thing, but I think a lot of it is she's always going to be after more, and that's something that people see in her, and why they hire her.
That's true. Speaking of which, we get some cameos from some pretty famous people. We see Frank watching his clip being played on Bill Maher. It's pretty funny. I did want to draw attention to that one just random, shoved right in there clip of Dennis Miller. Was that bothersome to anybody else? It just felt like it came out of nowhere. It didn't have context.
Well, maybe if the show were on 15 years ago and anybody still gave a damn about Dennis Miller, it would seem more relevant. But I'm like,
he still has the show. I just
he has. Yeah, he's still around. He jumped over to MSNBC or something.
I sort of feel like, Bill Maher. Yeah, Bill Maher's definitely still around. But even Bill Maher is not around as much as he would have been 5 years ago. But it didn't seem nearly as out of place to me as the Dennis Miller one did.
Yeah.
I'll chalk it up to bad editing, or maybe they had an argument about whether to keep the clip. I don't know. I guess Stephen Colbert wasn't available, huh?
What a shame.
That would have been perfect.
Oh, well. Okay, anyway, that was apropos of not much, really. I just wanted to draw attention to that. So Zoe is in that scene where she's talking to her editor, and there's really only one other scene she has in this episode, and that's where she sends that tweet out for Frank. In that scene, she barely does anything. She's more of a plot device than a character. I do feel like we're gonna get. Frank may, in his way, have to answer for blowing her off, as he does at the end here, and that appears to be what's being set up, right?
Without giving anything else away, yeah. Yeah, but even because I haven't watched beyond this yet because I was trying to not get ahead, but I think that there's no other reason to have him in the scene with her say. He says something to the effect of, I'll see you later tonight. And then also have her calling there. That's not something the show just does casually. There's reasons for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. They do appear to be building to something there. So I'm sort of reaching for things to say about Zoe because she wasn't much of a presence in this episode.
Well, no. Well, what I was thinking was just a little bit of, they can't do the same thing in every single scene.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever they're in her apartment, you expect them to verbally joust a little bit and have sex before or after, whatever. And they can't have that every time. They have to change something. So this is the time. This is the time for change.
Yeah. This and next episode.
Yeah.
To be continued, right? So, the other character who we're clearly building to great things coming up, of course, is Peter Russo.
Honestly, I think the problem is not having watched ahead, but having watched a lot of TV. You don't want a character like him doing well in episode 6. Because if a character is doing well halfway through the series, you know that things are going to get really, really bad. But, I think the amount of excitement he has in this episode, an amount of optimism, is both really great to see and also incredibly worrying and crushing. Because it's just going to make it worse when things fall apart.
Yeah. What I found really tragic about it is that when he tells Underwood he wants to run for governor, and that he's gone sober, and Underwood says, "Did you go sober because I asked you to, or for you?" He says he did it for himself, and he genuinely believes it. I won't even argue about that. But he was totally just manipulated into it. He doesn't seem to be even a little aware of that.
Oh, I don't know. He could have said, "I did it for my kids." I thought, but he didn't. No, he didn't. So, yeah, he decided to believe in himself in the moment, and I believe that he wants to believe. Maybe he was doing a lot of fake it till you make it for the moment. That works. It does work.
I have to say, I was watching the scenes with him a little differently this time, having just this morning read an article that Russell Brand wrote about addiction.
Yeah.
And how important it is for the person who's getting sober to want to be sober, and how all the love and all the support from your friends, as necessary as that is, you have to be in it for yourself.
Yeah.
And you also, and I thought it was interesting that they bring up the AA thing, because that's another thing that Brand was talking about in that article. I mean, he didn't name AA, but having people who know what you're going through. Mm-hmm. And so I watched that scene when Frank tells him, "No, you're definitely going to meetings," differently than I watched the first time.
Yeah.
It maybe made me a little more hopeful, and also made me wonder about Frank's motivations there, because the first time I watched it, I thought it was just completely straight manipulation. And I still think it's mostly motivation. I still think it's mostly manipulation.
There's a very simple, very pragmatic reason Frank asked him to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, even not seen ahead, it's foreshadowed there. But also at the same time, he's right. And that, I mean, even if he's setting up to have more control and more power over him, this is not a guy who can get sober on his own. This is a guy who is definitely going to relapse if he doesn't have some sort of support mechanism.
It's true, and we've already seen him try and fail, which might be what those his crash and burn in episode 3 was all for, to set up that knowledge that Frank is not wrong in this instance. Um, so we also seem to be beginning the process of running for, or setting up his campaign, setting up his platform, and starting the process of a bill that is going to get some of those jobs back from the shipyard, right?
Right.
I'm a bit. I don't know if I can talk too much about it because I know where this is going. People who haven't watched ahead, all right, which I think is actually just Emily.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. In fact, did you have a read on this? Did that make an impression on you at all, one way or the other?
I mean, it definitely caught my attention in terms of they're obviously going somewhere with it. I don't at this point have a feel quite where they're going.
Okay. All right. Well, then it probably doesn't bear mentioning until it gets to be more of an important plot point. I will say Peter mentions he's smart enough to know to bring up, hey, I don't have any environmental legislation under my belt. And that is going to be important. So bear in mind that he said that. Anything else on Russo?
I love him, and he's gonna break my heart, and it makes me very sad. He's there's something about his character that is more human than most of the characters we see on the show.
I agree.
And in a show like this, that you just have this feeling of dread in your stomach the whole time you're watching him.
I really agree.
Yeah.
It's also telling, I think Allyson said this to me when we were watching through the first time. Underwood says to Russo, you're going to make a great candidate.
Oh, yeah, I twigged
You know
that
what
too.
he didn't say?
You're going to make a great governor.
Exactly. But we're going to see. He's been on the back burner of the plot for the last few episodes, but he's going to get more important again. So, did anybody have anything else about Chapter 6 that they wanted to talk about?
Was this the first time we'd heard either Frank or Claire tell the other that they loved them?
I believe it is, yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
And she comments on it. We don't say that enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, we heard him say it to us in the first episode. Or the second, I think it was the first one.
Love her like a shark loves blood.
Yeah, which is a fantastic line.
Oh.
But I don't think we've heard him say it to each other.
Yeah.
So it was especially gratifying to see that, especially because it's right after Frank's first defeat, really. I mean, it's the first time in this whole series we've seen him flounder. And she offers him the support that he needs. So.
Yeah. Oh man, no, that's another episode. Sorry, something I shouldn't. I was just glad. I liked the ending episode, the sharing of the cigarette, and it's like passing the peace pipe to each other and remembering where they came from and all that, mushy stuff that really doesn't apply to them. They got as mushy as they're gonna get. We haven't seen them in bed together.
Yeah.
We haven't seen them go out and just enjoy something social together, except for the dinner, the fundraiser last week.
Which was totally work.
That was
totally work, right.
The couple they had over for dinner, a couple episodes ago, she was trying to get them to buy tables for the fundraiser.
Right.
Yeah. So
they are never not working.
They don't have much of a social life. What's funny is I was talking with Vita, who wasn't able to join us tonight, but she was talking about those scenes of the two of them at the window and how they just make her want a cigarette.
Power is sexy? I don't know.
The last time I saw a show glamorize smoking this much. But,
Oh my! I just marathoned 5 seasons of Mad Men. I wanted to smoke so bad.
oh, that's true. That's the other one.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Mad Men starts up soon anyway, so that'll be
Woo!
yay.
So, we're near the 45-minute mark. Did anybody else have any other questions or things they wanted to bring up about episode 6?
We never talk about Linda,
Oh,
Oh,
the sycophant-ish.
sort of.
Person.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll make a note to find some discussion points. I know she's going to be in the next episode, so we can
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about her next week because
She's
she's a character
not-
it's easy to take for granted.
Right. I was
She's
gonna say
gonna
she's
get some
not. She
really-
hasn't been that pivotal up till now.
What else?
she's gonna get some good scenes in a couple of episodes.
Yep. So, yeah, I'll make a note. We'll give her some special attention next week or next couple of weeks. But I think that's really all the discussion we've got for tonight. So for Geeks of the Round, I'm Jon Eric. This is Allyson Whipple, Emily Lind, and Lynn Ith saying good night, and we'll see you next week.
Woo!
Night.
Night.
Night.